Hi everyone, and welcome to Jab and Move with your host Stephen. And today I wanted to touch on the sad passing away of George Foreman. It's been a video I wanted to do for a few days. I didn't really know how to talk about it or even what to talk about because his career was just full of highlights. Amazing boxer, one of the greatest boxers, even athletes, to grace the world, and someone I think personally a lot of people in this generation, in terms of his reputation in boxing, can aspire to. But we'll go through it and we'll have a look. Like I said, the first thing I've got to touch on is probably top 3 greatest fights of all time. Rumble in the Jungle, Muhammad Ali. Phenomenal fight, phenomenal character. They both were warriors in that fight, and it only, again, even though he lost, it came out and absolutely enhanced his reputation, which there's very few fighters in the world that can have a fight and come out of it not just he had a heart of stone, or had heart in the fight, he showed courage, he battled through. No, not just that. He was technical, he was brilliant, and he really made Ali not only work for it, but possibly at one point thinking he may lose this fight. And that is something that very few fighters can do when losing a fight and enhance their reputation to such a level. So yeah, it was amazing, and that was one thing I wanted to touch on. And to be honest, the other 2 points I want to make about George Foreman and why I think he's definitely one of the greatest to grace the sport. First thing would be the fight against Frazier. To knock someone of that ability out, of that skill set within 2 rounds, I think that would be, so what would we say, probably prime Lennox versus prime Tyson, and one of them getting each other out within 2 rounds. That's the way I'd sort of compare it to generations really of fighters, and the level of caliber of those 2 fighters was just untouchable. Obviously Ali, along with that, they were phenomenal fighters. It was a generation of amazing fighters, but that fight really stood out for me for his victory. I mentioned these fights, but sadly I think Foreman really would be remembered for Rumble in the Jungle more than anything. And even though he lost, it's a sad thing to be that'll be the thing you'll be remembered for more than anything, and most people may point to as one of his highlights of the sport. But yeah, with that fight, like I said, to knock Frazier out the way he did was absolutely phenomenal, and it just showed the absolute level of the fighter and the level of the man. And we all know, like, it was a very long career. He took the 10 years off, obviously I think from 78 to 88, and he came back, and this is the one point I wanted to make about him, and this is for me personally what shows him as the fighter that he was. Between 77 and 87, he retired. Between 87 and I think it was 94, he had 30 fights. 30 fights. Could you imagine someone doing 30 fights this day and age in that short of a window? There's boxers who have careers that last less than 30 fights in the professional game. He did 30 fights at that point. He was 38 when he came back. He won his second world title. He became a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world at the age of 45. That is ridiculous. That is unheard of. There's only one man who's ever done it, and that is George Foreman. And there's a reason why, because it's not easy. Well, I'm sure people told him at the time it was absolutely impossible, but George clearly didn't listen and thought, screw you guys, I'm going to make it happen. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And to have 30 fights, to have, I think in 1 year, me and my friend were talking about this, I think it was 9 fights in the first or second year when he came back. It's just a joke. And then 5, 6, it was consistent, just work, trying to get to the level again of being a world champion. He came from nowhere. He was 10 years out of the sport. He's absolutely nowhere. He's not seeded. He's not even thought about at this point. Let's be honest. He's probably, in the mires of talking about stuff when fights come up. He is referenced at some point, but no one's ever expected him to come back and fight, let alone come back and be a world champion at the age of 45. It was amazing. And I think, again, his fight, his ambition, his dedication to the sport, really, for me, is something that stands out. And a lot of people in this generation, myself included, could learn an awful lot from George Foreman's career and George Foreman's efforts to become a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world, to be one of the greatest boxers to ever grace the heavyweight division, and even one of the greatest boxers to ever grace the world. And honestly, one of the greatest athletes in my eyes. I always put him up there as one of the best. and I always will moving forward. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a couple of things about him, the things for me that stood out of the man he was and the way he was as an athlete and boxer, and truly just say, rest in peace, George. Take care. Bye.